the CDPI offices in all of downtown. She had to stumble into mine. But as it happened, I was between cases. Once again.
I need to understand.
What is it you don't understand, lady?
This.
And this is what?
This is what I don't understand.
Lady, I kid you not. I am a PI, not a psychic. So suppose you start right at the beginning and explain in plain old English, short, easy words if you don't mind, exactly what is your problem, and maybe then you give me an idea how I can help you. That is, if I can help you. And so she told me about her grandfather, the one she was so close to, and how he took ill in the last cold snap. He was a tough old geezer, but a flu virus did what 2 world wars and the Great Depression couldn't do. Gave him double pneumonia and closed his shop for him. His last act on this planet, the very last thing he ever did, was to put this piece of paper in this envelope and write her name on it.
Mr. Davidson.
You get to call me Phil.
Phil, I'm not an unintelligent woman. I think of myself as a level-headed person, not given to superstition or excessive emotions.
I can hear a loud however coming down the freeway.
However, I will never find rest again until I found out what my grandfather tried to tell me. I will never be satisfied until I can understand this.
If I may ask, what made you think I can help?
You're the only detective listed with a PhD, and I think you'll need it. You can help me, can't you? I mean, you will help me to understand.
This dame was clearly out of it. Lady, those are my initials, not my qualification. I should have walked away from it right then. Made up some lame excuse. I'm a grizzled old tomcat, maybe got scratched once or twice too often. But then, I got curious. And curiosity is a PI occupational hazard. Sad fact is, they don't come any curiouser than Phil Davison. So I ended up promising I'd look into it. So up comes this case. I had no idea what I was letting myself in for. Before this case was over, lives would be changed. And mine, not least of all. I got cracking, doing the basic PI stuff. Got the word out, leaned on a couple of stool pigeons, made a couple of phone calls. Easy as pie, and right off the bat I picked up the trail. Turns out the lines that vex the dame so much come from a letter written by an individual called Paul, a.k.a. Saul of Tarsus. A Jew, and don't get me wrong, he was a hard case with a real attitude. A character with a record. I mean, he's writing this from the lockup in Rome, Italy. Hasn't been around for a while. He got knocked off some 1900 years ago. Word on the streets that he rubbed somebody up the wrong way, somebody right at the top, and this person or persons were real desirous to get him out of the way, no questions asked. Our guy Paul, so it'd seem, been a productive little troublemaker. Did a fair bit of traveling and writing, getting up people's noses, especially what you might call the religious establishment. Got him in the news quite a bit. So I got my first break. At least I know who wrote the dame's piece. Still, there was a lot more to this case than met the eye. What was the man on about? Until I got that figured out, I wouldn't be of much use to help the dame to understand. Right here, the case went cold on me. I spoke to 20 persons, some of them real know-it-alls. Claimed they had good info. So what's the problem? Thing is, my 20 experts gave me 20 opinions. 20 different opinions. Who was wrong, who was right. But there was one thing they agreed on. Whoever figures out what the old Jew was carrying on about would have his hands on something very, very valuable. Know what I mean? He would have answers to some of the toughest questions on this crazy planet. Those have been mauled by circumstances a fair bit and looking for meaning on this wild ride called life, they tell you, real answers are more valuable than all the gold in Fort Knox. Right then, I had this feeling. Sure, it looked like a real innocent piece of paper. I can read, but the more I read these words, the less they made any sense to me. But I knew it right deep down in my gut. It was nothing less than a treasure. A genuine 3-bell, 5-alarm, double-glazed, blue-ribbon treasure with all the trimmings. A treasure, indeed. and this treasure was somehow locked away. You could say with 4 massive bomb-proof, pick-proof, crack-proof, burglar-proof locks. To crack this case, to find the meaning of the words, to open the locks, I would need keys, and I knew right away, call it a hunch, there was only going to be one key for every lock. You want to understand the guy's letter? You gotta figure out who he was writing to. Words mean different things to different people in different places. Once you know the sort of person he's writing to, it makes it a whole lot easier to understand what the guy's saying. There's a fancy name for it. You can call it the communication situation, also known as the historical context. Let me explain. The word shoot means different things.
Shoot her!
Right away, Mr. Mezzanotte.
Shoot her!
Okay, boss.
Shoot her!
You want to understand what a guy's saying? First figure out who he's talking to, where they live, what they're up to. It's simple, but it ain't easy. I had to learn more, and I had to start with Paul, and then I had to check out his readers. It could be a complication owing to the fact that the whole bunch of them last took a breath 1900 years ago. This called for a time travel device. I got no reason to think that any of you got experience with time travel, so take it from an old pro. If you gotta go, you could do worse than going the Tempus Fugit way. You could say, it's time on the lam. A Tempus Fugit flight is not normally what you might call smooth. And a Tempus Fugit landing is not normally what you might call soft. But it's just another day at the office. I had some answers. I knew that Paul wrote the letter. I knew he was in cuffs at the time of writing. Said it himself. But for every answer, I had more questions. I was looking for a motive. Why did he write the letter? What were his circumstances? Who did he write to, and why? I couldn't figure his angle. Still, if I could find the answers, I knew we had a much better shot at getting a handle on the truth. This had all the makings of a long stakeout. Turns out he wasn't in prison at all, but under house arrest. Why? Seems that he cheesed off some very powerful individuals by telling it like it is. Truth was not real popular in the ancient Roman Empire, same as today. Paul took all of it on the chin. Been there before, and he's a tough cookie, what you might call a true survivor. Being in confinement did nothing to cramp his style. After a while, I got to understand his motive in writing the letter. Paul was connected, got friends all over the place, and he'd heard that somebody was feeding them a load of baloney. Got real anxious about it, and so he decided to set them right. Wrote them letters, and some of his trustees smuggled it off. I could see where Paul was coming from. Obviously, he knew the individuals he was writing to really well. They were staying in a burg called Colossi. If I wanted to understand the letter, I had to go there, get up real close to them, get the feel of the terrain, you could say. Another day, another stakeout. Colossi turns out to be a lively place with a good thing going in woolworking and cloth dyeing. Got the market cornered in dark red wool going by the label of Colossinum, what the well-dressed Roman wears to town. But the good people of Colossi do not just flog fancy rags. Seems that they had a lively little market going in every crackpot philosophical idea of the time. You got your Stoicists, your Epicureans, your Mysticists, your Legalists. And then there's my personal favorite, the Gnostics. Even in a time and a place of weird beliefs, the ideas these unsavory characters were flogging stood out for the sheer craziness of it all. They reckon they're too good for your average Joe. Got these truly strange ideas about bodies and spirits. Reckon your spirit stays holy while your body was free to whoop it up in the worst of down and dirty ways. Wackos, all of them. Worst of all, they go about saying they got a special airy-fairy knowledge, like some spiritual radar. If you ain't got it, and who does, then they reckon you had to listen and believe every word they spout. These con artists were running a hard-sell racket, and they were moving in on Paul's friends, as were the Judaizers, another precious bunch running around trying to get people to keep the old Jewish laws. No wonder Paul was ticked off and decided to get the facts on the table. Once I had these facts, Paul's letter to the folks at Colossi was coming nicely into focus. I knew where Paul was when he wrote it. I got a fair idea what was going through his mind. And I certainly knew who this letter was addressed to. They surely needed to be reined in and set straight. I had the first key. That takes care of the key our local PI calls the communication situation. Right here, I hit a snag. The dame's bit obviously came out of a much longer document. That I could tell. I needed to fit this piece into the right spot in the whole document. The boffs called this process the literary context. And it is the second key. Tell you the truth, in my line of work, I come across my share of letters, and it was as plain as the tramp at a black tie fundraiser that this piece wasn't the whole letter that Paul wrote. Any third grader can tell you that a letter's got a beginning, a middle, and an ending. All I had was a bit of what looked like the middle of a letter. That was no good. It's like a cartoon strip. If you only got the middle panel, you got nothing. For once, I had an informant pointing me in the right direction. But context is more than the little bit in front of your piece and the little bit after it. The bit fits into a bigger bit that fits into a bigger bit that... You get the idea. Until you get the big picture, the pieces were beginning to fit. I now knew what kind of document it was that Paul wrote. I knew where it fits into the letter. I had the second key, the one called literary context. My second key was a good fit. The snippet was in good old English. But it turns out that Paul wrote exclusively in very, very old Greek. Take it from me, you want to really understand something somebody wrote, you gotta go to the language he wrote it in. That would be the third key. The only Greek words I knew were ouzo, baklava, and talisavalis. I desperately needed a translation of Paul's letter. Well, turned out to be easy. Way, way too easy. Yeah, there's translations available. Many, many translations. Would have been nice if they all spoke out of the same mouth, but they don't, and you gotta tread carefully. Or else prepare for a crushing disappointment. I had to figure another way, and there was only one. I had to learn ancient Greek. Learning a new language may seem straightforward. Toddlers all over the world do it every day. But ancient Greek is not a spoken language anymore. You don't see any babies speaking it these days. Now I know why. Take the English verb to loosen. The Greek word is one of the easiest verbs to learn, luo. But even then, want to know how many versions there are of this word? Loads of them. And I'm not yanking your chain. Impossible to learn Paul's type of Greek? No, but it takes a lot of doing. Of course, if a man's got to do what a man's got to do. And if he happened to have his hands on the experimental Linguatron automatic language inducer, the third key, original language, is the most difficult one to get. Takes a lot of guts, and a healthy obsession is not a bad thing either. I was getting somewhere. I knew who wrote to who for what purpose. I knew what type of document it was and how it fits together. And I had Greek. One key remained. Call it text analysis, call it scriptural dissection, call it semantic discourse analysis, the way we communication, situational, literary, contextual, Greek-speaking gumshoes do. Call it what you want. It was time for me to go straight to the text, to open it up and find out what lies beneath. First things first. Gotta divide the passage in smaller units. Wanna get it out nice and clean. Cut the steak into chewable pieces. You follow what I'm saying? There. Good. Good. Don't wanna leave any pieces where it don't fit. Nice. Cut and paste. Cut and paste. Good. Really good. Sometimes you gotta hone in on the tiles before you can see the mosaic. No use if we don't understand the meaning of the words in context. Get that Greek into solid, clear English. Now, to mark the significant meaning indicators. What we're looking for are those heavyweight words that drive the piece. You know, the biggies. Next, we're going to establish what you might call the meaning structure. There. Gotta follow the writer as he develops his argument. All that's left is to draw your conclusions and make your summary. Makes a whole lot of sense to me. Nothing like a nice clear-cut dissection of a good solid bit of text. Good enough to put the cha-cha-cha in a cat's step. That was it. I had the last key. My job was done.
But will I understand now?
I can help you understand.
But the treasure. What about the treasure? Is it mine? Can I have it?
Anybody can have the treasure. It's right there where you can read it. And it's much bigger than we figured. These words, they're like light towers in the dark. They're life. The bit your grandfather left you comes from Paul's letter to the Colossians. He wrote many other letters, and not only him. He had partners, if you follow me, and they wrote letters. Every one of them a treasure. They're all in the New Testament.
I can hear a big however coming down the freeway.
However, to unlock these treasures, you'll be needing the keys.
But after all your struggles, everything you had to do, everything that happened to you, it's hopeless. How can I have the keys? I don't have a Tempest Fugit kit, a Linguatron, a text lab.
Lady, I know. It's what you might call... You know, for an old Seamus, I certainly been throwing around my share of complicated words. Might as well toss in another. It's what I call the exegesis crisis. Exegesis is the way you find out what's really written in a piece. I explained about the keys? Well, you could say the 4 keys, you know, in combination. That's exegesis.
But finding the historical background, the literary context, not to speak or having to learn Greek, doing a dissection on the text.
Lady, I brought you the keys.
If only I could... You brought me the keys?
I brought you this.
This is the keys?
It is Scripture Direct. You can think of it as the master key that fits all these locks.
But...
Now pay attention, lady. It's all here, and the choice is yours. You can go and research the communication situation of any book in the New Testament, or let Scripture Direct put you wise. Gives you a good backgrounder. History, cultural stuff, maps. Take Paul. He traveled to everywhere and beyond. All the necessaries. You can read many commentaries to track down the literary context. Or you can view the literary context in Scripture Direct. Bird's eye view, clean as a whistle. It's like stripping away a camel net from a hidden object. You can go and study an ancient language. Or you can let Scripture Direct crunch your Greek verbs for you.
Yeah, sure, I've seen programs do this for you.
With respect, lady, no, you haven't. Scripture Direct don't just list the Greek words with the English next to it. It shows you how the English truly links up with the Greek. It's interlinear, if you gotta know. And it's a snap. Just roll the mouse over the Greek words and phrases. This is a breakthrough in treasure unlocking technology.
But the semantic discourse analysis, how will I...
You mean you want to divide the passage in smaller units? Mark the meaning indicators? Explain words and phrases? Establish the meaning structure? Conclude and summarize the message? Scripture Direct, lady, lets you take care of it. Clear, clean, no mess, no slips. Click of a mouse, lady. Click of a mouse.
That is impressive.
Let Scripture Direct impress you some more, lady. Have a look at the most sensitive and pliable search facility in the trade. Scripture Direct don't just give you lists of the same words in different places. It is meaning sensitive. It shows where you can find words and phrases of the same meaning in the New Testament. Do you understand?
Yes.
Do you understand?
Yes.
Do you understand?
Eureka!
What was that?
That, Mr. PhD, was Greek for I have found.